Like I said, I don't think it's possible that quantum computers are going to crack AES encryption in my lifetime. Um, but what they're saying is the way that a cryptography works, public private key cryptography, is that if you have a private key, you use mathematical transformations in order to derive the public key. But it's a one-way operation, which means that you can't take a public key and derive the private key. You can't go backwards because it involves factoring very, very large prime numbers, and we don't have a computer that can do that. And so they're saying, okay, well, maybe in the future we'll be able to do that. So I'm going to save a whole bunch of public keys, and then after that's possible, I'll take those public keys, and then I'll derive the private key and gain access to the wallet. However, if you have a deposit-only wallet, a deposit-only wallet is a wallet that you're only dropping coins into and not moving coins out of. And that wallet has never had its public key exposed. So if you don't have a public key to crack, then that wallet is much more secure. Even though there's nothing that can derive a private key from a public key now or in the near future, if you have a wallet that has never exposed its public key by sending a transaction out, then it's a more secure wallet, theoretically, by this argument. Okay, so that was the exchange during the live stream. Let me unpack what's really going on here, because this is a great example of how two people can be technically correct, but talking about two different layers of key exposure. DocPortX said, you can't have a public key without a private key, so any public address is exposed unless you use a quantum-resistant format. And he's absolutely right that every address ultimately comes from a private key via elliptic curve cryptography math. But here's where the nuance comes in. The act of generating the public key inside the wallet is not the same thing as exposing it externally on the blockchain. And that's the difference that matters when we talk about deposit-only wallets and long-term quantum risk. Just because a wallet internally computes a public key doesn't mean that public key is visible on the blockchain or anywhere outside the wallet. Here's the key distinction. A deposit-only wallet is one that has received funds but has never broadcast a transaction. As long as it never sends crypto out, the public key remains unpublished, not on-chain, not visible to attackers. Only the hashed version of the key, the address, is stored publicly. When I make a withdrawal from a deposit-only wallet, that's when the public key gets exposed, because in order to prove to the network that I own the private key, I must sign the transaction. Blockchain nodes verify that signature using the public key. So Bitcoin includes the full public key in that outgoing transaction. At that moment, the Bitcoin wallet becomes tainted from a quantum attack perspective, because now attackers have the public key to study. So DocPortX's argument holds a little more when we're dealing with an Ethereum wallet, because Ethereum wallets are more account-based. So when you have an Ethereum wallet and you need the address to make a deposit, that address is derived from a hash of the uncompressed public key. But even if the public key isn't directly included in the transaction, ECDSA signatures allow anyone to mathematically recover it from the transaction. So in Ethereum, the first time you ever sign anything, and that could be a login message with MetaMask or a gas estimate, you've essentially exposed that public key, whether the wallet actually sends funds out or not. And then there's another distinction too. When you create an Ethereum wallet using a hardware device, that public key is calculated internally and is never exposed just by sending Ethereum into the wallet. So you could theoretically have an Ethereum deposit-only wallet. But that's really not how Ethereum wallets were meant to operate. They're meant to be more interactive. But when you're using a hot Ethereum wallet that's connected to the internet, like a MetaMask wallet or something like that, there are a lot of internal things that MetaMask does when it creates Ethereum wallets that do expose that public key. As I mentioned, that public key can be derived from those transactions when MetaMask first sets up the wallet. MetaMask might conduct some test signatures, some gas estimates, some nonce lookups. Those sort of things are transactions that get signed, and then from that signature, the public key can be derived. So when DocPortX made his statement about how when a wallet creates the public key in the first place, it gets exposed, it holds pretty well when we're talking about a hot Ethereum wallet. But Bitcoin wallets behave much differently than Ethereum wallets. That's why a Bitcoin deposit-only address has real long-term privacy and post-quantum advantages, while Ethereum wallets generally don't. Now, none of this means that anyone can crack your key given the public key. Elliptic curve cryptography has a principle that means that the private key derives the public key and the operation cannot go backwards. That's what makes it secure. If you have a public key, you cannot computationally derive the private key, at least not with today's computers. That's what we're talking about now. We're talking about the current state of elliptic curve cryptography. But what we're doing with using a deposit-only Bitcoin address is giving that Bitcoin wallet some level of quantum resistance in the long term. None of this means that anyone can crack your public key today. Quantum computers are nowhere near powerful enough. We'd need millions of stable, error-corrected qubits. And most quantum computers today have qubits on the order of thousands, and they are error-prone qubits. So the state of quantum computers as of today do not pose a threat to cracking these keys. And having a quantum computer capable is years off based on these factors that they must overcome. But one future concern is if someone harvests exposed public keys today and quantum breaks through later, long-lived wallets with revealed public keys could be retroactively vulnerable. That's why Bitcoin deposit-only wallets, where the public key has never touched the blockchain, are theoretically more secure in a future quantum scenario. So yes, the public key is mathematically derived from the private key, and it exists. But it is not automatically exposed just by generating the address or receiving crypto. Exposure only occurs when signing a broadcast transaction, because that's when verification requires the public key. So in short, Bitcoin deposit-only wallet equals public key exists but remains unpublished, more quantum resistant before spending. Ethereum wallet, public keys usually become exposed after the first signature or DApp login. Only hardware wallets fully keep public keys internal before signing. So the simplified takeaway is this: Bitcoin deposit only equals safer if never spent. Public key is never revealed. Ethereum, public key is recoverable as soon as you sign a transaction. Software wallets usually expose the public key early. Hardware wallet delays exposure until your first outbound signing. Again, not an urgent threat, but something to understand if you want to prepare your wallet structure for long-term resilience. knowledge is your first layer of security. Now that we've settled that piece of the debate, let's jump into how this ties in to Coinbase's rotation strategy and what wallet designs the industry is working on to get ahead of future cryptographic risk. Stay with me. And then finally, I have a story. Ken sends me most of my stories during the week. And this one came in earlier today. So, and this is a little bit interesting about how Bitcoin wallets work. I talk a lot about how exchanges are custodying your Bitcoin for you, and it's not self-custody. But they do use crypto wallets on their exchanges, on their servers. So it's still kind of self-custody as far as they're concerned, because they are actually holding their crypto in crypto wallets. They just happen to be under their control, and they have the private keys. So this is an interesting little breakdown of kind of wallet strategy and best practices. So let's take a look at this article. I think it's pretty interesting. The crypto exchange said the planned internal migration is a normal best practice, you hear me use that term quite often, in the industry to maintain cybersecurity standards. Crypto exchange Coinbase initiated a large fund migration on Saturday, moving tokens to new internal wallets in a scheduled routine security procedure to reduce long-term exposure of keeping funds in the same wallet address that are publicly known. The migration is not due to any cybersecurity breaches or external threats, according to an announcement from the company. Migrating wallets is periodically a well-accepted best practice that minimizes long-term exposure of funds. This is a planned migration and unrelated to industry changes or price conditions. This is not in response to a data breach incident or external threat. This means that large Bitcoin and Ethereum and other token balances will be moving on-chain from Coinbase wallets to other internal Coinbase wallets already labeled by blockchain explorers and intelligence platforms. Coinbase warned users that during the migration, scammers may attempt to exploit the situation by impersonating Coinbase representatives and reaching out to customers requesting login information or asking users to shift funds, which the exchange never does. So be on the lookout for anyone that claims to be, they're going to use this as a pretense and say, I'm sure you heard the news that Coinbase is moving their wallets around, so we need your help because we're moving some, don't let them trick you using this event as a pretext for gaining access to your account, even if they claim to be from Coinbase. These guys are really good. They're going to sound very convincing. They're going to ping you with text and emails to convince you that they're from Coinbase. Anybody can spoof an email or spoof a phone number. So please don't listen to any of these people that try to call you up and convince you that they're from Coinbase. But let's dive into what this means about wallets. The warning is a reminder that crypto users must remain vigilant against phishing attempts, hacks, scams, and other cybersecurity attacks in an ever-evolving threat landscape. Idle balances may be a honeypot for hackers. Why? Periodically shifting funds is a best practice. Hackers target centralized servers, information systems, and hot crypto wallets, which are connected to the internet, to extract information and value from users. These centralized repositories containing vast quantities of information or tokens are attractive to threat actors, who often plan these attacks for months and see the large centralized systems as honeypots. The emergence of artificial intelligence and AI-powered tools also gives hackers an edge in assembling heuristic clues through publicly known information and other metadata that can compromise sensitive information or lead to theft, cybersecurity experts tell Cointelegraph. Now, I'm going to read a few more paragraphs here. I don't necessarily agree with this because when I was at Ledger Open, there were several cryptography experts, and all three of them, Charles from Ledger, a couple other guys that work at universities in the privacy coins like Zcash and some other company I can't remember the name of. All three of those cryptography experts who have been in cryptography for many years said that they don't think quantum computers will be able to break AES encryption in their lifetime, right? So take what this person says about quantum computers with a grain of salt. I know quantum computers, there's a lot of hype around them, but I'll go ahead and read you the paragraph now. Quantum computers also pose a threat to the current cryptography technology, long term, perhaps, right? Which is not far off in the future. Okay, so that's what I don't agree with. Most experts say it is far off in the future, but may have already materialized retroactively. Gianluca Di Bella, a smart contract and zero knowledge proof researcher. Okay. Threat actors may be compiling crypto public keys now until a sufficiently powerful quantum computer is invented. Then the quantum computer can derive the private key from the public address in a harvest now, decrypt later attack. So basically what they're saying is if I know the public key of a crypto wallet, I'm just going to save it, and then hopefully later when quantum computers are able to crack public keys and derive private keys from them, I'll be able to hack that. So a couple of things about that argument. In fact, I heard this at that panel at Ledger Open, and one of them was, okay, so you have a system that is secure now by cryptography, and somebody might want to hack it in the future with quantum technology. Well, if it's information, if it's personal information, if it's government information, then they might be able to hack it later and gain access to historic information, which may or may not be helpful to them. But when we're talking about value, if someone hacks your Bitcoin wallet 10 years in the future after you've already sold it, it's not going to be a big deal, right? So that's one thing. It's like this is value that we may or may not have 10 years from now or 20 years from now or 30 years from now, or even after my lifetime. But the idea here is that if you keep moving your Bitcoin around, then this historic public address isn't going to do them any good because now it's been emptied, right? Even though that doesn't rule out the possibility of them discovering your new public address. But here's something that is an interesting wrinkle on all of this. Like I said, I don't think it's possible that quantum computers are going to crack AES encryption in my lifetime. But what they're saying is the way that a cryptography works, public-private key cryptography, is that if you have a private key, you use mathematical transformations in order to derive the public key. But it's a one-way operation, which means that you can't take a public key and derive the private key. You can't go backwards because it involves factoring very, very large prime numbers, and we don't have a computer that can do that. And so they're saying, okay, well, maybe in the future we'll be able to do that. So I'm going to save a whole bunch of public keys, and then after that's possible, I'll take those public keys, and then I'll derive the private key and gain access to the wallet. However, if you have a deposit-only wallet, a deposit-only wallet is a wallet that you're only dropping coins into and not moving coins out of. And that wallet has never had its public key exposed. So if you don't have a public key to crack, then that wallet is much more secure. Even though there's nothing that can derive a private key from a public key now or in the near future, if you have a wallet that has never exposed its public key by sending a transaction out, then it's a more secure wallet, theoretically, by this argument. So, and that's what I've done. And I have a Bitcoin deposit-only wallet. And then I also have another Bitcoin wallet that goes in and out, right? So the incoming wallet, payments come in or crypto comes in, and then sometimes I'll sell out of that wallet. But I also have a different wallet where I only make deposits. So that wallet is what I consider clean. Now, there have been times where, okay, I need the Bitcoin that's in that wallet. So if I make a withdrawal from that wallet, if I send some Bitcoin out of that wallet, then in my mind, that wallet has now been tainted because the private key has been exposed onto the blockchain. So then I will create a new wallet that's brand new, empty wallet, and transfer the remaining balance of my formerly deposit-only wallet over to the new deposit-only wallet, and the public key has never been exposed on that wallet. I know I'm kind of getting into some theoretical territory here, but I thought that I would bring up this. And the best practice that Coinbase is talking about is, hey, if you've got a public, Coinbase deposit addresses are pretty much out there, right? And the Coinbase wallets that hold Bitcoin are constantly having Bitcoin going in and out of them. That's their business model, right? So those public addresses are just floating out there, and scammers might be able to do some recon because there's so much data on those wallets. So Coinbase, normally they're going to move those wallets into new wallets. Of course, they're not going to make them deposit-only wallets. Maybe they will, some of them, but most of them are going to be working wallets. But what that means is that all the data that these hackers have gathered over several months or years of research are suddenly worthless to them because Coinbase has migrated those balances into new wallet. Now they have to start all over again and start gathering data on those wallets. Pretty crazy. But anyway,